In the year 2471, humanity had spread far across the stars. From the glowing cities of Earth to the mining colonies on the moons of distant worlds, humans had built a shining network of life in the darkness of space. Yet even as they conquered the stars, a silent problem was growing. People were lonely. Space was cold and endless, and life on distant colonies was filled with isolation. Explorers, soldiers, and engineers lived light years from their families. The stars were beautiful, but they had taken away something important: the feeling of belonging. Birth rates across human colonies dropped. The government called it a crisis of connection. Humans were losing not only population but also emotion. To solve this problem, the Terran Federation created something new, something no one had imagined before. It was called the Companion Allocation Initiative. Under this program, every government officer who had served more than 5 years off-world would be assigned a life companion, a husband or wife, chosen by advanced artificial intelligence. The system claimed to use millions of data points to find perfect matches. The companions would be selected, trained, and transported directly to the assigned officer's station. The government promised it was for emotional stability and population balance. Many thought it was a strange idea. Some said it was a good plan. Others called it unnatural. But no one expected how deeply it would change the future. Captain Elias Ward had been serving on the frontier world Chorus 9 for almost 8 years. He commanded a small group of engineers and security officers who maintained the planet's defense grid. The world was quiet, a rocky desert filled with glowing blue sand and long nights that felt endless. Elias was respected by his team. He was known as calm, disciplined, and kind. He never shouted, never complained, and always worked beside his crew. But inside he carried a heavy silence. His parents had died during the expansion wars, and he had never married. He believed his duty to humanity was enough. One morning, while checking power relays near the East Outpost, Elias received a communication on his wrist console. The words glowed in blue. Notification from the Companion Allocation Initiative. He frowned. Must be some kind of mistake, he said quietly. His second officer, Lieutenant Cole, leaned over curiously. Sir, you finally got matched. Maybe they found someone who likes boring desserts. Elias gave a small smile. Funny, probably an error in the system. But when he opened the message, it was very real. The words were clear and official. Captain Elias Ward, based on your service record and psychological profile, your assigned companions have been selected and are en route to your location. Arrival, 1800 hours. Prepare for integration protocol. He read it twice. Companions. He muttered. Plural. Cole laughed. Well, sir, looks like you're getting more company than expected. Elias didn't reply. The idea felt strange. The government assigning him a wife or multiple wives felt cold and mechanical. Relationships weren't something a computer could create. Still, when the government gave an order, one didn't refuse. At exactly 1800 hours, the sky above the colony shimmered. A silver transport ship descended slowly, its engines glowing soft white against the pink horizon. The landing platform filled with curious workers and soldiers. Everyone had heard of the program, but few had actually seen it happen. Elias stood near the platform, his uniform neat and his hands behind his back. His heart was calm, but his thoughts were not. He had faced alien threats, survived battles, and even commanded under pressure. But this felt entirely different. The ship's ramp opened with a low hiss. A voice echoed from the Federation console nearby. Captain Elias Ward, please confirm identity for companion allocation delivery. He stepped forward. Captain Elias Ward, identification code 42A, Ward 17. Confirmed, the machine replied. Your government-issued wives are ready for you. The crowd fell silent. Even Cole stopped breathing for a moment. Then 3 figures stepped out of the ship. The first was a tall woman with silver-gray eyes and calm expression. Her movements were precise, almost graceful, as if she had been trained for diplomacy. She carried a data slate in her hand. The second was shorter, with warm brown skin and short hair tied behind her head. She looked strong, confident, and wore a light medical uniform. The third walked a little slower, her dark hair flowing gently in the wind. She seemed shy, her gaze drawn to the sand and sky, as if she was seeing beauty in both. They stopped in front of Elias, standing in perfect formation. The ship behind them lifted off quietly, leaving only soft wind and starlight. The first woman spoke. Her voice was clear and steady. "I am Lyra, Diplomatic Specialist, Designated Companion Unit 1. The second saluted sharply. "Tess, Field Medic, Companion Unit 2. The third smiled softly. "Ari, Systems Engineer, Companion Unit 3. Elias looked at them, trying to understand. "You're my assigned companions?" Lyra nodded. "We were chosen for psychological and practical compatibility. Each of us fulfills a specific role to ensure your mental, emotional, and physical balance during service." Cole whispered behind him. "Sir, they're serious. You've got a team of wives." Elias gave him a look, and Cole quickly pretended to study his datapad. Elias turned back to the women. "I see. Well, welcome to Chorus 9. I suppose we'll have to make this arrangement work." Tess smiled faintly. "We were trained to adapt, Captain." Ari looked up from the sand and met his eyes for the first time. "Do you really believe we can just make it work?" she asked softly. Her voice carried something deeper, something human. Elias paused, unsure how to respond. That night, the small colony base felt different. Word of Elias's companions spread quickly. Some officers made jokes. Others watched with curiosity. Many were jealous, but Elias was quiet. In his private quarters, he sat at his desk, reading the files on the three women. The government had given detailed records: genetic health, psychological profiles, education, and even sleep patterns. Everything was measured, planned, and approved. He sighed. "They're treating people like systems." He heard a knock. It was Lyra. "Captain, may I enter?" "Of course," he said. She stepped inside, her gray eyes thoughtful. "I wanted to clarify our situation. We were not created to replace choice. The initiative believes human connection can be calculated. We are meant to test that theory." Elias looked up. "And do you believe that?" Lyra hesitated. "I believe emotions cannot be programmed. But I also believe humans need connection to survive. Perhaps both ideas are true." Before Elias could answer, Tess entered, holding a tray of warm nutrient tea. "You both look like you're thinking too much," she said lightly. "Drink this before your brain overheats." Ari followed quietly, carrying a small device she had repaired. The air filters in the east corridor were damaged. "I fixed them." Elias smiled slightly. "You didn't have to," Ari shrugged. "It gave me something to do." The four of them sat together in silence for a moment. The hum of machines filled the room, and the stars outside shone through the glass window. For the first time in years, Elias felt something new. Not command, not duty, but a sense of life returning to the empty base. Over the next few days, the companions began integrating into daily work. Lyra helped communicate with alien traders who visited the planet for minerals. Tess assisted the medical staff, quickly becoming respected for her skill and empathy. Ari worked in the repair bay, often staying late to fix small systems others ignored. Elias watched them quietly. They were efficient, disciplined, but also curious, more human than he had expected. One evening during sunset, Elias found Ari standing near the observation deck, watching the horizon. "The desert glowed like liquid gold. Beautiful, isn't it?" he said. She nodded. "I never saw a real sunset before. I was trained on a space station. We only had simulated light." Elias stood beside her. "You speak like someone who wants to see the world, not just serve it." Ari smiled faintly. "Maybe both. Maybe we're not so different, Captain." He looked at her for a moment and realized something unsettling. He didn't see her as a government-issued anything. He saw a person. As night fell, Elias stood outside the base looking up at the stars. He thought about the initiative, about the strange idea of assigning love, and about these three women who had suddenly become part of his life. He didn't know what the future would bring, but something inside him whispered that this program, this experiment, was going to change everything. For better or worse, the story of Captain Elias Ward and his government-issued wives had just begun. The days on Chorus 9 began to move differently after the arrival of Captain Elias Ward's government-issued companions. Before, the base was quiet and mechanical. People worked, ate, and slept without emotion. But now, there was laughter in the dining hall. There was music playing from Ari's small speaker in the repair bay. There were conversations during dinner that made the lonely planet feel almost alive again. For the first time in years, the crew felt human. Elias had always believed that work should come before emotion. But the three companions, Lyra, Tess, and Ari, were showing him something new. Each of them brought a different light into the base. Lyra, with her calm voice and thoughtful eyes, began helping him with diplomatic messages to nearby colonies. The frontier had many small outposts, each ruled by local commanders who often disagreed on trade or territory. Lyra had a natural talent for words. She could listen to both sides and find peace where others found conflict. Tess, always smiling, became the heart of the medical center. She would treat every injured worker with patience and care. When people were tired or afraid, she encouraged them. Many soldiers said she reminded them of home, and Ari, quiet, intelligent, and curious, worked tirelessly with machines. She repaired old systems that had been broken for years. The oxygen filters, the power regulators, even the old communication tower. She fixed them all. It was as if she was fixing not just machines, but the colony itself. One morning, Elias walked into the control room and found Ari sitting on the floor, surrounded by open panels. "What are you doing?" he asked with a small smile. "Fixing the sensor array," she replied, holding a wire in her hand. "It keeps sending false readings." Elias crouched beside her. "That array's been malfunctioning for years. No one could fix it." Ari looked up with a spark in her eyes. "Maybe no one wanted to." He chuckled softly. "You're not like most engineers." She smiled. "I'm not like most people either." Elias didn't say it, but he agreed. There was something different about her, about all three of them. They weren't like machines following programs. They felt real. Their thoughts, their reactions, even their emotions, they seemed human in every way. Sometimes he forgot they were part of a government experiment. One evening the crew gathered in the dining hall. It was rare for everyone to be in one place, but Tess had insisted. "I made something," she announced proudly. The others looked at her in surprise. "Made what?" Cole asked. "Homemade stew," Tess said, placing a steaming pot on the table. "I found local plants that are edible and safe. I thought we could try real food for once." The crew looked unsure. The colony usually relied on nutrient packs, tasteless gray blocks that provided energy but no joy. Elias raised an eyebrow. "You cooked using plants from Chorus 9? Tess grinned. "Don't worry, Captain, I tested them first, they're safe." Cole sniffed the stew cautiously. "If I pass out, tell my family I died a hero." Laughter filled the hall. When they finally tried the food, everyone was silent for a moment, then they smiled. It wasn't perfect, but it was warm, flavorful, and real. "This," Cole said, "is the best thing that's ever happened to this planet." Tess laughed. Maybe the first good thing. Even Elias smiled, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Over the following weeks, Lyra began studying alien communication records. The colony often interacted with nearby alien traders from the Valari Union, a race known for their delicate speech and strict traditions. Most humans found it difficult to speak with them because their language used sound and light patterns together, but Lyra learned it in just a few days. When a Valari envoy ship landed on Chorus 9, Lyra stood beside Elias to greet them. The aliens looked tall and elegant, their skin glowing faint blue under the sun. They expected the usual mechanical translator, but instead Lyra stepped forward and spoke in their own language, using sound tones and gestures perfectly. The Valari leader's eyes widened in surprise. "You speak as one of us," he said slowly. Lyra bowed slightly. "I speak as one who wishes to understand." The leader smiled, a rare expression among his kind. The meeting that followed went better than anyone expected. Trade agreements were signed in half the usual time. Afterward, the Valari leader said quietly to Elias, "Humans are strange. You create harmony through emotion, not control. You are not like the others." Elias looked at Lyra. "Maybe we are learning." That night, Lyra stood on the balcony outside the command center. The desert winds were soft, carrying the faint hum of machines. Elias joined her, carrying 2 cups of warm tea. "You handled the meeting perfectly," he said. Lyra smiled faintly. "Thank you, Captain, but I did not do it for recognition." "Then why?" he asked. She turned to him, her silver eyes reflecting the stars. "Because peace is easier when someone listens, and I think humans have forgotten how to listen." Elias thought about her words. The Federation's systems, the programs, the policies, all designed for order, not understanding. Maybe she was right. "You're different, Lyra," he said quietly. "Not just from others, but from what I expected." She looked at him calmly. "Captain, none of us are what we were expected to be." As time passed, Elias noticed small changes in all 3 companions. They began showing more independence. They questioned orders, not in rebellion, but with curiosity. Ari once asked him why humans fought for territory when they already had so much space. Tess asked why officers couldn't decide their own futures after service. Even Lyra began writing personal notes, thoughts that weren't part of her official duties. Elias realized something. These women weren't just following programming. They were learning, growing, and becoming individuals. One evening, while checking reports, Elias found Ari sitting in the observation dome again, staring at the stars. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. Ari smiled softly. "I don't need much sleep, but I like watching the stars. They remind me that everything is connected." Elias sat beside her. "You speak like a philosopher." "Maybe I'm just trying to understand where I come from," she said quietly. He looked at her curiously. "Where you come from? I thought all companions were created in Federation labs." Ari hesitated. "That's what they told us. But sometimes, I remember things, places, faces, dreams that feel too real to be fake." Elias frowned. "Memories?" She nodded. "Yes, but I don't know whose." Her words stayed with him long after she left. Could the companions really have memories of lives before the program? That shouldn't be possible. The next day, Elias sent a private request to the central database, asking for detailed information about the Companion Allocation Initiative. The reply came almost instantly, but most of the files were locked, marked classified level red. He stared at the screen. Why would something meant to help soldiers and officers be so secret? He closed the file, his mind uneasy. Meanwhile, Lyra had noticed the same unease spreading among the companions. They had begun whispering quietly among themselves at night, asking questions they were never trained to ask. Who were they really? Were they born or made? Later that week, the colony received an inspection ship from the Federation. A stern officer, named Director Halden, arrived to evaluate the program's progress. He met Elias in the control room. "I see your companions have integrated successfully," Halden said coldly. "Yes," Elias replied. "They're efficient, but they're also independent. They think for themselves." Halden frowned. "That's not ideal. Their purpose is to serve emotional and operational balance, not develop opinions." "With respect," Elias said calmly, "they're not machines. They feel, they question. Isn't that what makes them human?" Halden gave him a sharp look. "They're government property, Captain, remember that." He left the room, but his words lingered like a shadow. Elias looked out the window, where the 3 companions were working together under the golden sky. They laughed softly, unaware of how much they had already changed their world. That night, Elias stood on the balcony again, watching the stars. He felt a quiet realization forming in his heart. The government had tried to design perfection, companions built for emotional stability and service. But what they had created was something far greater. They had created life, imperfect, unpredictable, and human in every way. Elias whispered to himself, "They wanted control, but they made freedom." And somewhere deep inside the Federation, the first cracks in that control had already begun to appear. The story of Captain Elias Ward and his companions was only beginning. And soon, the truth behind the Companion Allocation Initiative would be revealed. The sun rose slowly over the dusty plains of Chorus 9, painting the colony in shades of gold and red. Captain Elias Ward stood by the control tower window, sipping his morning tea, but his thoughts were far from peaceful. Something had changed, not just inside him, but across the base. The three companions, Lyra, Tess, and Ari, were no longer behaving like assigned partners. They were thinking freely, asking questions, and acting on their own will. To some, it was inspiring. To others, it was dangerous. That morning, Lieutenant Cole entered the command center with a worried expression. "Sir, you might want to see this," he said, handing Elias a datapad. The screen displayed several encrypted messages intercepted from nearby Federation channels. The words were partial, but Elias caught enough to understand. Companions showing signs of non-compliance. Memory fragments detected, possible identity. Error. Commanders to report unusual behavior. Immediately, Elias frowned. "They're tracking them." Cole nodded. "They're afraid of something. Maybe the companions are more human than the government wants to admit." Elias looked out toward the colony square, where Ari was helping workers repair solar panels, her face calm and focused. "Or maybe," he said softly, "they were human all along." Later that day, Lyra entered his office holding a small metal chip. "Captain, I found this in the communication archives." "It doesn't belong here." Elias examined it. The chip was marked with an old Federation code, one used for classified files. "Where did you find it?" he asked. "In the external comm logs," Lyra said. "Someone tried to delete it, but I recovered the fragments." Elias connected it to his console. A list of names appeared, hundreds of them. Each name had a date of birth, a genetic signature, and a note beside it. "Transferred to companion program." Elias scrolled down, feeling his heartbeat quicken. None of the names matched any official record. "These aren't lab creations," he whispered. "They're people." Lyra's voice was soft. "Yes, people who were taken." That night, Elias gathered Tess, Lyra, and Ari in his quarters. He locked the door and dimmed the lights. The three companions sat quietly, their faces tense with confusion. Elias placed the chip on the table. "I found something. Or rather, Lyra did." He projected the list into the air. Names glowed across the room. Ordinary names, human names. Tess leaned forward, her eyes wide. "What does this mean?" "It means," Elias said slowly, "the government didn't create you in labs. These are records of children taken from lost colonies during the expansion years. They were altered, trained, and assigned as companions." The room fell silent. Ari's lips parted slightly. "Taken from families?" Elias nodded. "That's what it looks like." Lyra stood, her voice trembling but steady. "We were told we were born to serve, that our purpose was to help humanity survive. But if this is true," she looked at him, "then we were never created. We were stolen." Tess clenched her fists. All those years of training, tests, and control, like they lied to us. Elias looked at each of them, his voice calm but firm. "You don't belong to them. You're not property. You're people, with your own thoughts, your own hearts." For a long moment, none of them spoke. Then Ari whispered, "What will they do if they find out we know?" Elias looked at the stars beyond the window. "They'll try to silence us." The next few days were filled with quiet tension. The companions continued their duties as usual, but each of them carried a storm inside. Lyra stopped attending her regular check-ins with the Federation liaison. Tess began reviewing medical data, searching for proof of her real DNA history. Ari started exploring the communication system more deeply, learning how to send hidden messages through civilian networks. Elias knew they couldn't hide forever. If the Federation discovered their actions, the consequences would be severe. One night, Ari came to him with a plan. "We can send a message," she said. "A broadcast across the outer colonies. If people know the truth, the Federation won't be able to stop it." Lyra frowned. "That's dangerous. They'll trace it back to us." Tess shook her head. "She's right. People need to know." Elias studied their faces, brave, determined, and filled with purpose. "If we do this," he said slowly, "there's no going back." Ari met his eyes. "We're already past the point of return." They spent 2 nights preparing. Ari coded the signal using encrypted frequencies. Lyra wrote the message itself, simple, clear, and powerful. Tess gathered all the medical and genetic records that proved the companions were human. When everything was ready, they gathered in the control room. The room was dark except for the blue glow of the main console. Outside, the desert winds howled softly. Lyra placed her hand on the console. "Ready?" Elias nodded. "Do it." Ari pressed the final command and a wave of light spread through the screens. The message was sent. It traveled through satellites, communication towers, and ship relays, across hundreds of human worlds. The message appeared on every Federation broadcast channel, every civilian data hub, every terminal. "We were not created. We were taken. We are human. We remember." The signal lasted only 20 seconds before the system shut it down, but it was enough. The truth was out. The next morning, panic spread through the colony. Federation command ships appeared in orbit. Communication lines were jammed. An official message came through. "Captain Elias Ward, you are charged with data theft and illegal transmission. Prepare for immediate inspection." Cole ran into the command center. "Sir, they're demanding we surrender the companions." Elias remained calm. "No one is being surrendered." Lyra stepped forward. "They'll arrest you if you resist." Elias looked at her with quiet strength. "I faced worse than arrest. I'm not letting them take you." By afternoon, the sky above Chorus 9 filled with transport drones. The crew watched nervously from the ground. The Federation wanted control back, but something unexpected happened. Across the colonies, thousands of humans began sending messages of support. Officers, miners, engineers, all demanding answers. The story had spread faster than any of them imagined. Even on distant worlds, companions began stepping forward, revealing their memories, their human feelings. The Federation tried to deny everything, but the evidence was everywhere. On Chorus 9, Tess read the reports aloud. "Look at this. People on Mars colony are protesting. On Vega Prime, the news stations are calling for a full investigation." Lyra's voice was soft but full of hope. "The truth is growing." Elias looked at them. "Then we hold our ground. No matter what happens, the world knows now." That night, the base lights were dimmed. The crew gathered together, uncertain of what tomorrow would bring. Ari stood beside Elias on the balcony, watching the Federation ships glimmering in the distance like silent shadows. "Do you think they'll come for us?" she asked quietly. "Yes," Elias said. "But I also think they're afraid." "Afraid of what?" He looked at her, his expression steady. "Of the idea that they can't control what makes us human." Ari nodded slowly. "Then we've already won." As dawn came, a broadcast echoed across the system, not from the Federation, but from ordinary humans. Messages filled the airwaves. Let them choose. Freedom for all companions. We are one humanity. The government's control was breaking. Colonies began refusing orders, demanding justice. The Federation fleet could not fight every world. Inside the base, Elias and his companions watched the live feeds with quiet disbelief. The movement they started had spread beyond imagination. Tess whispered, "It's beautiful. People standing together." Lyra smiled softly. "It's human." Ari turned to Elias. "You started this." He shook his head. "No, you did. You just needed someone to believe in you." By evening, the Federation sent one final message to every colony. Effective immediately, the Companion Allocation Initiative is suspended pending full review. A cheer rose from the workers across Chorus 9. People hugged, cried, and laughed. Even the once silent machines hummed like they shared in the joy. But Elias knew it wasn't over. The truth had only begun to reshape the future. As the sun set, he stood with Lyra, Tess, and Ari outside the command center. The wind carried the sound of distant celebration. Lyra spoke quietly. "What happens now?" Elias looked at the stars, glowing like scattered fire across the night sky. "Now," he said, "humanity decides what it truly means to be free." Far above them, the stars continued to shine, silent witnesses to a rebellion not of weapons, but of hearts. It was a rebellion born from truth, courage, and the simple belief that no system, no law, no government could ever decide what it meant to be human. And as the light of the new dawn touched the desert sands of Chorus 9, the story of Captain Elias Ward and his government-issued wives became a legend whispered across the stars. A legend of love, freedom, and humanity's unbreakable spirit. The desert of Chorus 9 was quiet under the glow of the twin moons. The colony had never seen a night so peaceful, yet so full of tension. Captain Elias Ward stood atop the main observation deck, looking out at the horizon. In the past few weeks, everything had changed. The government had tried to control him and his companions, but the truth had spread across the stars. Humans on distant colonies were rising, demanding freedom and transparency. The Federation fleet had retreated from aggressive actions, knowing they could not fight the spirit of an entire civilization. Elias breathed deeply. This was not victory through force. This was victory through truth, courage, and the heart of humanity. Beside him, Lyra, Tess, and Ari watched the desert glow in soft silver light. Lyra spoke first, her voice calm and thoughtful. "Captain, I never imagined our actions would reach so many worlds." Elias turned to her. "You didn't just reach them, Lyra. You inspired them. You showed that humans, all humans, you deserve respect and freedom, not control." Tess smiled warmly. "It's strange. We were meant to serve. Instead, we helped change the galaxy." Ari's eyes reflected the moons. "And now, what happens next?" Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. "Now we build a new future, one where every companion, every human is treated as a person, not a tool." The next morning, news began arriving from distant colonies. The movement sparked by Elias and his companions was growing. On Vega Prime, colonists demanded the Federation publicly acknowledge the companions' rights. On Mars, engineers refused to follow orders that restricted freedoms. Every world, every colony was sending a message. Humanity will not be controlled. The Federation had no choice. They issued an official decree. Effective immediately, the Companion Allocation Initiative is suspended. All companions are to be treated as individuals, with full rights and freedom. Further research and deployment are paused indefinitely. The colony erupted in celebration. Workers hugged each other. Engineers cheered. Even the usually silent machines hummed a brighter note, as if sharing in the joy. In the weeks that followed, Elias and his companions became symbols of hope across human civilization. They traveled to distant colonies not as rulers but as guides. They spoke of freedom, choice, and human dignity. Everywhere they went, humans listened and changed. On a research station above Nova Prime, Ari helped scientists repair old starships that had been abandoned for decades. She showed them how creativity and ingenuity, not orders and control, could rebuild civilizations. Tess worked with medical teams to improve the health of colonies. She trained doctors and nurses to see companions as equals, not experiments. Hospitals became places of healing, not monitoring. Lyra spoke to diplomats and leaders across the human network. Her words carried peace, understanding, and hope. She reminded everyone that empathy, kindness, and cooperation were more powerful than control or fear. Back on Chorus 9, Elias often returned to the observation deck at night. The desert was quiet, but his mind was alive with possibility. He remembered the first day the companions arrived, how strange and artificial it felt, and how quickly they had become so much more. He turned to Lyra, who stood beside him, her silver eyes reflecting the starlight. "Do you ever wonder," he asked softly, "what would have happened if they had never come?" Lyra smiled faintly. "I think humanity would have survived, but maybe not with its heart intact." Elias nodded. "We've learned that freedom and love cannot be given by a system. They can only be chosen." Tess joined them, carrying a tray of warm tea. "And sometimes," she said lightly, "the people who make the rules forget that humans are stronger than their systems." Ari leaned against the railing, gazing at the horizon. "Stronger. And better than they think," Elias smiled. "Yes, that's the story of humanity. Always reaching, always growing, always surprising." The companions and Elias began working to reform old systems. They dismantled control measures, restored rights to those affected by the initiative, and helped colonies establish local councils. Every colony learned that the strength of humanity was not in control, but in cooperation, empathy, and courage. At the same time, the companions explored who they truly were. They visited old orphan colonies, discovering families and histories they had never known. Ari found a distant cousin living on a moon of Zyra, and Tess discovered letters written by her birth parents, expressing hope that she would survive the program. Lyra uncovered records of children like herself, who had been taken, but were now free to choose their paths. Each reunion, each discovery, strengthened the companions' understanding of humanity, not as a system, but as a living, breathing network of hearts and minds. One evening, the four of them stood together on the Chorus 9 observation deck, looking at the stars stretching across the sky. The desert was silent except for the soft hum of the colony below. Elias spoke quietly. "We've changed the world, but there is still so much to do. Freedom is not a single moment. It is a choice every day." Lyra nodded. "And we will guide others to make that choice." Tess smiled, her hand brushing the railing. "It feels peaceful, knowing we helped people understand themselves and each other." Ari's gaze was on the horizon, the moons reflecting in her eyes. The stars are ours now, not just to explore, but to share with everyone. Elias placed his hands behind his back, his chest swelling with pride. "We were given a strange experiment, and we turned it into a revolution of hearts. That is humanity at its best." Months passed, and the galaxy slowly healed from the damage caused by the initiative. Colonies flourished, companions were recognized as individuals, and a new era of cooperation began. Elias and his companions became legends, not because they were strong warriors or brilliant scientists, or perfect diplomats, but because they reminded humans of what mattered most: love, freedom, and the courage to stand for truth. Children on distant colonies grew up hearing stories of the captain and his companions. They learned that one person, guided by the right hearts, could change not just a planet, but a civilization. Even the Federation learned to respect choice. Policies changed. Programs were rewritten. Humanity realized that no law could replace the wisdom of the human heart. One quiet night, Elias and his companions returned to the original colony base on Chorus 9. The desert was still, peaceful and glowing under the twin moons. Ari turned to Elias. "Do you ever miss the old days?" Elias thought for a moment. "Sometimes. But I prefer this, a world where we choose who we are and what we do." Tess looked at him. "Do you think humans will remember what we did?" Elias smiled. "They will. Not as an experiment, but as a lesson. Humanity is strongest when it respects freedom, loves fully, and stands together." Lyra stepped forward, her hand brushing the railing. "Then our story isn't over. It's just beginning." He nodded. "Yes, and the stars are watching." Above them, the night sky sparkled with countless lights, ships traveling between colonies, satellites blinking softly, and distant worlds glowing with life. Humanity had spread across the galaxy, but now it carried something more than technology or power. It carried hope, empathy, and the unbreakable spirit of its people. Elias looked at his companions, Lyra, Tess, and Ari, and felt the weight of their journey. They had been given a system to follow, orders to obey, and roles to play. Instead, they had chosen humanity, and in that choice, they had changed the universe. The wind of Chorus 9 whispered softly through the desert, carrying the promise of new worlds, new possibilities, and new stories. For Captain Elias Ward and his companions, the journey was far from over. They had fought for freedom. They had taught humanity to value itself. And they had proven that the heart of a person is stronger than any law, program, or command. The stars shone brighter that night, as if reflecting the courage of one captain and 3 companions who had dared to believe that humanity was worth more than control, that it was worth love, respect, and freedom. And so, under the twin moons of Chorus 9, a new era began, an era where humans were truly free, and where the story of Captain Ward and his companions became a legend told across the stars. Humanity had not only survived the stars, it had risen. It had become truly, gloriously human.